welcome back to Pokemon Platinum. We did a little bit of plot, and we made our first real lap around the region, so it's time to go do stuff we need to be able to do. And yes, I got a Starly purely for Fly. Yes, you do. Oh, and I can also learn Defog, which is nice.
Oh boy, everybody's favorite HM,
Ugh.
they said.
Literally the worst one.
Yeah.
Here's my question. When you use Defog, it's like in one place, right?
Yeah.
Basically.
You have to reuse it every time you go there.
Every time you go back into that room, yes. You don't have to use it like in between fights.
Encounters
So
or
you
something.
can't even just use it to get rid of all the fog in the game and then dump it forever.
Well, I mean, it's the same way that Flash worked, though, is the thing, because Flash.
Also, it's a matter of you're never coming back to the Shroud anyway, so who cares?
Yeah, I mean, what I don't remember is if there's like multiple floors to the route that will keep it open, like how Flash keeps the cave lit every floor.
Here's the thing about that, Ryan. If you're playing the game without a guide, in other words, if you don't hate fun, you're not necessarily sure that there aren't Pokemon in that route that you want to go back and catch.
You take 2 steps in, you walk into the nearest patch of grass, and you wiggle back and forth.
You know what I mean?
How random battle encounters in RPGs work. There are certain encounters.
They do in this one.
You don't know that unless you've looked it up.
So,
my point is, you're going to go deeper into the route and try random battles elsewhere just to see if they work.
So one of the things that I'm really annoyed that Game Freak got rid of, because Game Freak likes to introduce good ideas and then never use them ever again. Pokemon Black and White 2 had a feature where I think on the bottom screen, or at least in the Pokedex menu, it would list the Pokemon by route, and also would put like a little star or something when you've seen all the Pokemon in that route. So, or I think they even had it so that once you've seen all of the grass Pokemon by route, and then once you've seen all the fishing Pokemon in that route. And it was really, really useful because once you have seen all of the Pokemon that can appear in that route, you know that you're done. You don't have to run in circles anymore, which is great. And then they took it out and never brought it back, and it's really, really annoying. I feel like Game Freak kind of just assumes that everybody looks things up online nowadays, which, I mean, everybody does do that, but I would still much rather have these resources be in the game instead of out of the game, you know?
That's kind of what I was getting at. Like, okay, it's fine if there's guides that you can look up if you get stuck or just don't want to put in the time, or, you know, you've put in all the time that you can and now you want to see what you missed. That's all well and good. Game design.
Thank you, Joe Merrick.
Game design that requires you to look up a guide to find things is fucking Zodiac Spear bullshit.
So one thing about Pokemon, and this is something that, you know, a lot of RPGs have issues with, is it's like, oh, I can't find that one last item. You know, it's like, okay, I can't, like, if you're missing TM number 62 and it's the only one you have left and you want to find them all, then you're basically screwed if you ended up missing it, because there's no way to locate, you know, any missing items. Some other games have certain things to, like, kind of make that a little bit less painful. Like, you know, they'll give you an item or an ability that tells you how many treasure chests you haven't opened on a specific floor or whatnot, which is still tedious, but at least you can cross stuff off more quickly and you don't have to search every route in every dungeon for the one item you missed, you know? Yeah, and that's actually one of, we were talking about this earlier in the playthrough. Because you need to have at least seen every Pokemon in the Sinnoh Pokedex in order to get your Pokemon from your GBA games. It's frustrating when you ended up having missed one, because if it's missing in your Pokedex, you don't know how to find it. You know, if you're missing Pokemon number 163, and let's just assume for sake of argument it's like Tropius or something, so it's not, you know, something that you can put in through logic, like, oh, I have Vulpix, but not the one right after it, maybe I need to evolve Vulpix, you know. It's just like, okay, I know that I'm missing a Pokemon, but which one? Time to, you know, search wildly or just look up a guide, which I feel like a lot of the Pokemon fandom has just kind of just does now. It's hard for me to say because it's, I can't assume what like the 6-year-olds of today are doing. Like, do the 6-year-olds of today look it up on the internet? I would like to assume no, but I can't say that for sure.
My litmus test is, is there a reasonable way you could have done this in the natural flow of gameplay? And is there a way that you could do it if you miss it? But, there is a difference between needing a guide to know how a certain thing works and it being highly encouraged that you use a guide under certain situations. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. So, on the subject of random battles, it really does depend on what game you're playing, and I'm never sure exactly where Pokemon falls on this, but in a lot of RPGs, the random encounters aren't just area context sensitive, but like dependent on where exactly on the map you're standing. Like, for example, I'm pretty sure the random battles in Phantasy Star 1 are determined by which tile you land in a random battle on.
So, for Pokemon, this, up until, Gens 1 through 6, it was always dependent on, like, the area you're in. So, what floor of a dungeon or what route. Gen 7 actually changed it, so for wild battles, it's now specific patches of grass. Like, this patch of grass and this other patch of grass in the same route might have different Pokemon, but thankfully, the Pokedex is better in that game, and it will mark which specific patch of grass that Pokemon lives in, so
right.
you don't have to guess. So yeah. I did appreciate that.
I guess my point is, you never necessarily even knew, when you started up a new Pokemon generation, whether or not they changed that. So if you were playing blind, you had to experiment at some point.
I definitely know that as a kid, there was confirmation bias that was the case. Like, I didn't know whether or not for sure one Pokemon was more likely to appear in one patch of grass versus the other, but it felt like it was. It was one of those things like, oh, this patch of grass in Viridian Forest, I'm more likely to get a Pikachu. Why? It just seems to happen more often. Was there proof? No, there wasn't. But, random number generation is a weird thing, and sometimes you get coincidences that feel like that. And it also doesn't help that when Gen 1 was out, people would believe anything you told them about it. So, you just kind of assumed that anything.
Also didn't help that in Gen 3 Phoebus was a specific 6-tile patch, and you didn't know which one it was because it was random every playthrough.
Oh, God. You see, I don't even know how people figured out that it was like 6 tiles or something like that. Or
someone probably just hacked the game.
Yeah, but it's just like one of those things like, how did anybody legitimately catch Phoebus? I'm sure somebody did, but...
Well, it's not even 100% on that tile. It's like, what, like 10-ish% or something?
I think it is relatively common on that tile. I think it's like 80. But if you're trying to search for it legit, you can't just do it once on every tile because, there is that 10 to 15% chance you get the Magikarp or whatever. So you have to fish 2 or 3 times on each tile just to make sure. I think in that route, like a third of that whole route, and it's a long column of a route too, is water tiles. I think I did once try to catch a Phoebus on it, and I spent like an hour, and I only got like a fourth of the way through, and I gave up because life's too short for that, and it's easier to get in later gens anyway. So why bother?
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know who at Game Freak decided that they should listen to the things that people said as pranks when Gen 1 was popular, because they added the Phoebus thing, and then later on in Gen 6 they added the twisting your 3DS upside down thing to evolve a Pokemon, and I don't know if anything in the game tells you that that's what you have to do. I would feel like there has to be.
I'm sure some NPC does, but...
Yeah, but it's still a really stupid mechanic.
Yes, it is.
Ugh.
And there's going to be no good... assuming Inkay is in Sword and Shield, I don't know how you're going to legitimately do that if someone likes to play docked all the time.
Well, the Joy-Cons and Pro
I
Controller both have motion in them, so I guess you could...
I guess just hold the controller upside down, yeah.
Yeah, but there are official controllers without motion controls. Like the USB plug-in ones don't have it, so I guess you're just kind of screwed if you try to use those. Or like the GameCube ones. There are official GameCube... I know that the GameCube adapter lets you play GameCube games, GameCube controllers on Switch.
I mean, you can play Mario Kart with the GameCube controller.
Yeah, but there are like Pro controllers that are designed to be GameCube controllers. And I don't think those have motion controls. So if you use one of those, I think you're also just screwed. So yeah,
gotta take your
take off your
Switch out of or just take the Switch out of dock and just hold it upside down.
That was still the most God.
It was also really picky about what it considered upside down too.
Oh, really? Because I haven't tried to evolve that Pokemon.
It took me a few tries to do it.
Also, when does it have to be held upside down? Like as soon as you finish the battle, or
that may be part of it. I have no idea.
You see, I'm personally kind of glad that they stopped doing evolutions for old Pokemon, and then decided to go with like forms and stuff instead that don't involve.
But they really, what I've always said is that they just need to get over the whole, separate items that you need to trade and do this other convoluted shit. Just have them evolve by levels. We get it.
It's just
you didn't think of it at the time. You don't need to come up with an excuse as to why they weren't there before.
The breeding is also a frustrating thing too, because you have to have like Snorlax holding a specific incense in order to make it a Munchlax.
Yeah, but just let it be a baby Pokemon. No one cares, Game Freak.
You see, it's also what makes it frustrating for breeders too, though, is let's say you want to get like a perfect IV Snorlax for competitive. All right. If you want that to have, because I think the reason why certain baby Pokemon are still around is because if you have that baby Pokemon, it can learn moves that it normally wouldn't be able to learn. So, like, if you want the Snorlax to be a Munchlax when it hatches, you have to have the Snorlax hold the whatever incense it is. But that means that when the Snorlax is in the daycare, it can't be holding something like the Everstone to make it inherit a specific nature. Or you can't have it hold the Destiny Knot to make it inherit certain IVs. So basically, if you're trying to breed and it has one of these incense items or whatever in order to have the specific baby form, you're just adding a lot more randomness into the equation, because now you have to wait to get the one with the right nature, or you have to wait for the one with the right IVs, which takes a long time. I mean, breeding still takes a long time, and I wish there was somewhere in the game specifically that tells you that if you have a Pokemon holding an Everstone when it's in the nursery, it will hatch with the same nature and stuff like that, because as far as I know, that's only stuff that you learn from guides on the internet. I don't think it's ever said in any of the Pokemon games, although if it is, please correct me, because that's something that
I think they vaguely hint at it, but they don't tell you specifically that's what it does.
Yeah, they're always like coy about that kind of stuff. Like I know that for a long time, like IVs and stuff like that, there might have been like a character who says, "Oh, their best stat is X. Oh, their X stat is really, really good," but it won't be specific, And it's still like that even up to this day with like Pokemon Go, where, you have the appraise function and it'll tell you generally how good that Pokemon is, but people will just download an app in order to get the true value of their stats anyway. So, yeah, I guess my long rant basically just means is if you're going to have all of these complicated hidden mechanics that are necessary to use, if you're going to have these games be competitive, which Nintendo and Game Freak clearly still want them to be because they hold major world championships every year, then maybe make it convenient to do so within the games and not having to look up voodoo magic on the internet.
Yeah, yeah. I have like this big ass rant about IVs and EVs and whatever, and if I were to go off on it, I'd probably lose us half our subscribers.
Yeah.
Because it would make it sound like I hate Pokemon, and I really just hate this aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm mostly with you in that it's a mechanic that doesn't do anything to make the single player more enjoyable, and all it does for the multiplayer is add a bunch of grinding. Because, like, for example, with the individual values, the idea is, oh, each Pokemon's stat growth is different, right? Which is a cool idea in theory, but if you're multiplayer battling, there's no reason to have anything but having all of the stats at max anyway, right? So, like, what's the point? You know? So
yeah, it's like... the idea of making different Pokemon variable is nice on paper, but when you add the competitive element, all it means is, in order to be competitive, you need to have the best variables. Not just the best Pokemon, but also the best variables within those Pokemon. So, yeah.
There's always, like, these little baby steps that Game Freak takes to try to mitigate that. Like, in Gen 7, they added these items you could use to make the Pokemon have better IVs and, like, bump them up to max, which, okay, is nice, but getting those takes a lot of grinding anyway, and in many cases, it's faster to just breed for good IVs than it is to
that's kind
get
of like
the items
saying,
anyway.
That's kind of like saying, hey, you don't have to draw magic in Final Fantasy VIII. You can just refine these super rare items that take hours to get into magic instead. I'm like, yeah, that doesn't really fix the problem.
Isn't the most efficient way to get magic in Final Fantasy VIII just to, like, buy a bunch of cheap items and transform them into magic?
There's one exploit where if you have a certain refining ability, you can just buy tents and then turn them into Curaga spells. And yeah, you get a lot of money in Final Fantasy VIII, so it's really easy to get Curaga early on. And
so
you can then dump the Curaga spells onto your health and then be unkillable.
So in Final Fantasy VIII, if you draw one fire spell, that means you can cast fire once. And in order to cast fire again, you have to draw another fire spell.
Well, you're almost never going to draw one spell at a time, but yeah, that is effectively what it is.
Yeah, so it's a limit on how many certain spells you can.
Right.
That's Sticker Star. That's
because
Paper Mario Sticker Star. Holy shit.
Well, because of the way the system is set up, you're basically encouraged never to use your spells. Unless it's Aura.
That is Sticker Star. Oh God, man. Oh.
Okay, so we need art of Paper Mario just doing Final Fantasy VIII shit.